Well, looks like I'm going to have to do the music today. Good thing I brought my mandolin because more technical difficulties here. The miracles of live radio. There should be music there, as you may be aware. Today we're going musicless for the time being, at least, because of technical difficulties. I blame Joe Biden. Is it Biden today, Michael, or is this Vlad Putin again? Hard to say. What's the difference? Might be the NSA, could be the deep state. Welcome, and happy Monday to you all. Hope you had a wonderful 4th of July weekend in the United States of America, or wherever you may be around the world, because I know we have a great many listeners, various points around the planet, around the globe. Again, thanks to Al Gore, peace be upon him, the inventor of the internet. Wonderful stuff. Listen, we have a great many things, even without music, to get to today. A great many things. I picked up my Washington Post today, which arrived on my front doorstep before the sun came up, and it has some pretty funny things, pretty funny stories. On the front page, above the fold in the Washington Post, pressure on Biden from party increases. That's the headline. It's above the fold. It's on the left side of the front page of the newspaper. As the president hits Pennsylvania, 4 House Democrats say he should drop out. Drop out. He's a dropout. He should be a dropout. What is the terminology they're using? They're saying step aside. Step aside, not step down, but they're all using the same words as they always do. They're like Germans. The party says, use the words step aside, and then everybody uses the words step aside. And that works for everybody because they're Democrats, they're the left. Speaking of which, on the upper right-hand corner of the front page of the Washington Post today, France rejects shift to right. And I saw on CNN and MSDNC this morning, they're very excited about this. They want the left to be in charge because they only murdered 100 million people and destroyed like 70 countries. So they like the left. Major upset by left and center is the subheadline there on the front page. Lead story of the Washington Post. Realignment may lead to political paralysis. They like political paralysis, I think. And there was a guy that was a left-winger. I watched some Morning Joke this morning, and they had a left-winger on, naturally. Who else would they have on? A left-winger on who was saying it's time. He pointed out that the United States pays for 2/3 of NATO. You know, that we are responsible for funding 2/3 of NATO, never mind the 31 other countries. We're responsible for 2/3 of the funding, and, you know, we're the big dog on the block and all that good stuff. 32 countries, they're having a summit in Washington this week. It's going to be very inconvenient for me. That's how I view the world, of course. How the NATO conference in Washington will inconvenience me, and it will. But France rejects shift to right, like so many other European nations and Latin American nations are shifting to the right because the left has already wrecked everything they can wreck, and they're just standing there with their hand outstretched, looking to steal more of your stuff. But on MSDNC this morning, this left-winger said, yeah, you know, the United States pays for 2/3 of NATO. Remember, President Trump tried to make him pony up and pay more, and he was attacked for it. In fact, he's still being attacked for it. Hey, NATO, how about you guys pay your fair share? They don't believe in that pay your fair share thing. The Democrats don't. When it comes to NATO, they just figure the American Midwest should pay for Latvia's security and everybody else's security, France. And the guy on MSDNC said, it's time Germany steps up. He says, it's time Germany steps up. And everybody says, ooh, wait a minute, you got to be careful when you go there, don't you? And I think we've got some experience with the history of Germany and militarism, don't we? And the guy said Germany needs to step up and start kicking in more because they're the only ones with the economy and the military capability to really contribute. He said, but, you know, they're haunted by their Nazi past. Yeah, the Socialist Workers' Party under Adolf Hitler, they did cause some problems, if I remember correctly, some real issues. Yeah, but the 75th anniversary of NATO this week, the creation of NATO and the big conference, the big gathering is in Washington, D.C., going to be very inconvenient for a lot of us. And that means what? Joe Biden was only 6 years old when NATO was created. Is that right? That's it. I think that's correct. So we've got that. A couple of the things we have going on, and really it's all about Joe Biden, because when I saw today's headline on the front page above the fold, pressure on Biden from party increases, I laughed because it reminded me of yesterday's front page above the fold headline, their actual lead yesterday, the upper right corner. And their headline yesterday in the Washington Post was, Biden digs in as walls close in. As walls close, they brought walls close in out for Joe Biden. But I thought walls close in and the walls are closing in was exclusive to Donald Trump. Remember, we put together montages during the Trump years of the news media talking about the walls closing in on Donald Trump again and again and again. And that's because the left, speaking in France, where the left, they decided to celebrate last night. So they went out and they burned a lot of stuff and attacked things and spray painted anarchist symbols all over their monuments and things in Paris, because, now we have the same left here, except they mostly speak some English at least. They smell about the same, though, don't they? I think they definitely do. Smelly French leftists out rioting in the streets at night, and your average American Democrat pretty much smell the same. Same grooming habits. An amazing thing. But yesterday's headline, Biden digs in as walls close in. Push for his exit is gaining steam. Steam is being gained, and that's a good thing, because it is time that the walls closed in on Joe Biden. The walls don't usually close in on Democrats because it's all about the corrupt news media, the most corrupt institution in the United States of America. So just scratching the surface on really it's about Joe Biden and, should he stay or should he go now? And it's kind of an interesting thing because, at this point, it's Trump Republicans that want Biden to stay because it'd rather run against Joe Biden than just about any other, bag of stuff, remarkable stuff, I got to say. And the Republican Party, there's a little bit of a schism. Should Joe Biden go, and then who do we end up with? Maybe Kamala, maybe not. But I don't know if you're aware of this, she's a woman of color. Have you heard that? She's a black woman and Indian, too. She's both black and Indian from, Asia, not Colorado. And remarkable stuff. So they're thinking that they've got to take her because she's a woman of color and they can't kick her to the curb. Except here's the reality. The Democrats will do whatever they want to secure power. And if it means kicking her to the curb, they'll kick her to the curb. When the moment comes to kick Joe Biden to the curb, they'll kick Joe Biden to the curb. That's what's going on here. And also I've got update, the Republican convention, the Republican National Nominating Convention is coming up on July 15th. And since today is July 8th, it turns out that that's actually next Monday that the Republican convention begins in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's remarkable stuff. And the Democrat convention, where they have to announce who their candidate is, that doesn't actually happen until August 19th. And that's in Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, I saw this morning there was some alarm on the television news media that Russia fired a missile into Kiev, which is not pronounced Kyiv, it's pronounced Kiev. And the Russians, led by a commie named Putin, they like to pretend he's not a commie since they're such commies now. They say, no, we're not like him. He's not a commie. We're commies. Commies are good. That's today's Democrat Party. They're here to harvest your children's organs. Honestly, the Democrat hysteria, the hyperbole, it's the end of democracy itself. Democracy itself. My campaign is for Republicans to come out and say that if Joe Biden wins, and if any Democrat wins this year, it will be the end of life on Earth, of all life on Earth. All life on Earth will cease to exist. Mammals, sea life, plant life, all organic life will cease to exist on Earth. And then when they say, well, that's a lot of hyperbole, say, unlike the democracy coming to an end thing. But the Democrat convention is in Chicago, Illinois, as you may be aware. It's August 19th. And when I saw today that Russia, Putin, commie, Vlad the Impaler, fired a missile into Kiev, killed 9 people or 10 people. And the news media is outraged. And then I went and I looked at Chicago. And over the weekend in Chicago, Democrats killed 17 people. They shot 100. It's like Fallujah in Chicago. Honestly, it's why they call it Shirakistan. It's because it's full of Democrats who are shooting everybody all the time, because Democrats are mostly criminals. You can't say they're all criminals because some haven't committed their crimes yet. But, you got Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and James Biden. They're all Democrats, right? Jill Biden's going on the campaign trail, too. Doctor, who's not a doctor, Jill Biden, she's going on the campaign trail because Joe can't. So they're sending his wife. They did this with Woodrow Wilson a century ago or so, and it's back. And Joe Biden remembers it well because, he was hanging out with Mrs. Woodrow Wilson at the time. But the Democratic convention, again, the Republican convention starts next week. Kind of a big deal. That's in Milwaukee. And the Washington Post headline is, left-wing violence expected to be rampant in Milwaukee, or words to that effect. I'll get to that in just a few minutes. And then the Democrat convention is in Fallujah, in Shirakistan, Illinois. And remarkable stuff. They had, over the 4th of July weekend, at least 100 shot, 17 murdered. But the news media doesn't mention that. They talk about what happened in Kiev, which is unusual enough, but they don't talk about what happens in Chicago because they think it might make the Democrats look bad, and they're right. Isn't that amazing? Also, when Joe Biden gets kicked to the curb, which is Barack Obama just has to say the word, a wink and a nod from Barack Obama, and Joe Biden will be catapulted into the Atlantic Ocean from one of his beachfront mansions that he got with his $180,000 a year salary. It's good to be a Democrat because it might look suspicious if you're a Republican. But then Kamala will be in the gate, right? Kamala ready to launch. And the news media has to start. I was making fun of this over the weekend with my best girl. We were walking around talking to my best girl. So, the media is going to have to start telling us lickety-split. Going to have to start telling us lickety-split that Kamala has been a really great vice president and that she is a learned politician and that she has mastered the art of being president. They're going to tell us this, that she is so great and so smart. They're going to have to start pumping her up because the BS never stops from the American news media. They lie to us about how great Joe Biden is. And now, because the obvious became so obvious that it was no longer deniable, which is one of my old rules I haven't whipped out in a long time, but the Chris Plant rule from long ago, many years ago, that when the news media finally comes around, when it becomes too embarrassing to talk to their parents and tell them about the BS that they're carrying for the Democrat Party, now they're being forced, the media, to confess that Joe Biden is an idiot and that he always has been. You've been hearing it here because we tell the truth here. They tell you lies there. And the reason they're upset is because their political power may be in jeopardy. The New York Post with a great headline, Dems increasingly worry President Biden will spell doom for down ballot races. And a Democrat bigwig declares the beep is going to hit the fan. He used a bad word I can't use here. And he's talking about his own party. Growing number of Democrats want Biden to drop out by Friday, says the left-wing Axios. And more lies from cringe. Then we learn the truth later. Biden's doctor repeatedly met with a top neurologist at the White House because everybody know his brain, she's a broke. She's a no good. Parkinson's disease doctor specialists at the White House. David Axelrod says it's time to go. And a hilarious story about a Democrat radio host interviewing Biden, and the White House gave her the questions to read, and she did. And then Joe Biden read the answers that they gave him to read. This is the left. They're going to be burning Paris soon. Is Paris burning? We're at 888-630-9625. All right, I think we have our technical capabilities back here in the studio. Computers and music and things like that. All part of the fun. See how long they last now. And let's go to the telephones before we get back to Joe Biden, a man in full, such as he is. Let's go to, let's see. Let's go to Andrew calling from Manassas, Virginia. Andrew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, it's been a long time. Nice to talk to you again.
Welcome.
First of all, I really suspect the Democrats might be holding their powder until Trump is a lock through the nomination process at the convention. But I think if Trump was smart, right now what he would do is pivot and say it doesn't matter who they put on the ticket. Biden, Harris, Whitmore, whoever. The fact is, I'm running against the media. The media lied to you about everything. And if you elect anybody from the Democratic side, you're going to have a press that is going to cover up and lie to you. If you elect me, you guarantee a transparent president, because they're not going to lie for me. They're not going to cover up for me. And what we need as a country now is a presidency that you can trust that the press is going to go after. And I think that would be his greatest move at the moment.
Republicans running against the news media is always good policy, and particularly true with President Trump. They're not going to lie for me. They're going to lie about me, just like they did the last time when we had $2.11 gas, when we had 1.2% inflation, no war in Europe or the Middle East. Yes, the terrible, scary old days when Donald Trump was in the White House and Russia was in a cage and Putin was quiet. And, he invaded Crimea when Obama was in the White House and Joe Biden was vice president. That was part of Ukraine, too. And then he didn't invade anybody when Trump was president because Trump scared him. Trump had punched him in the nose, and he was afraid. So it's peace through strength, and then you get war through weakness and ineptitude and broken brains, and that's what we have with Joe Biden. And they're selling us, it's so great with Joe Biden. He's such a good president. Boy, these are the good old days, aren't they? Yeah, with the open borders and the gang warfare and the murders of young women by illegal alien gang members all over the country in Georgia, and the rapes in New York, and murders in Maryland and Chicago, and they're making everything better, aren't they? And we had a 1.2% inflation rate in 2020 under President Trump, and then Joe Biden drove inflation to 9.1%, and of course, inflation rate, and then the interest rates went through the roof, and people can't buy houses, and so people can't sell houses, and made everything better. We got the gangs and the open borders, and Barack Obama did tell us that the fundamental transformation of America was coming and that we should all learn to speak Spanish. He did warn us. Then he moved to a giant mansion on an island in the ocean with security surrounding him because he knew what they were doing. Remarkable stuff. And there was peace in the Middle East. President Trump had 3 peace deals between Arab nations, Muslim nations, and Israel. And the Democrats, they attacked his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, because he was brokering the deals, and he's wealthy. So they hate that. And he's Jewish, so he must control the weather and stuff like that. Yeah, gasoline was like $2.11 a gallon. I got gas yesterday, and I think it was $4.89. Got it in Virginia. I get premium, though. Very high performance vehicle. Yeah, and they're telling us everything was much better under Biden and much worse under Trump. Really? I got an idea. You guys stop shooting everybody. Here's the thing. Joe Biden is being shoved toward the door by one group of people, and he's being pulled toward the door by another group of people. Just Democrats, and Republicans don't have a lot of say in all this. And about half the Republicans say, "Oh no, Joe, please stay. We'd like you on the ballot on Election Day because you've ruined everything, you maroon." And others say, "No, Joe should go because then we'd run against Kamala." But they don't have to keep Kamala. Here's the reality, though. My best girl said this to me over the weekend. Joe Biden is becoming, if he is not already, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the White House. They're furious with Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she didn't retire from the Supreme Court in time for a Democrat president to replace her with an America-hating lefty that never read the Constitution and doesn't know what a woman is. Democrat selections for the Supreme Court. They hate you. They hate America. They don't know the law. They hate the Constitution, but their gender and their melanin levels are correct. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't leave in time, and the Democrats are furious. They always loved her. They want to give her a tongue bath. Don't think about that for too long. And then she stayed too long on the Supreme Court, and it was terrible. They were very, very upset with her. Ruth Bader Ginsburg ends with a black eye when they loved her so much for whatever reason. And now Joe Biden is becoming the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the White House, because if he stays and President Trump wins, then he will officially become the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the White House of electoral politics. It's a remarkable thing because they'll turn on you in a heartbeat. They're the left. They're so filled with hatred. Their central value is hatred. Their family value. It's remarkable stuff. Yes, it is. Yes, sir. Yeah, and I look forward to getting to the radio hosts that got their questions handed to them with Biden interviews. I interviewed President Trump down at the White House when he was president, and there were no questions issued. There were no questions suggested or recommended. I went and I interviewed President Trump, made some news before the radio interview was even done. Fox News was covering the exchanges that we had, but they're so corrupt that they just give and of course, remember, there's a lot to talk about there because we've seen him in the press conferences where he's got the index cards with the little pictures of the reporters on there and their names and go to this person first and that person second. And here's the question they're going to ask. And then they have the answer to the question on the next index card or on the back of the same index card. And we've seen this over and over again. And now we've learned more about that, too, because they're giving Joe Biden pictures of where he's supposed to walk his own staff. They're giving him photographs when he's walking out on stage with instructions like, now walk to the podium. Because if you don't tell him that, he may just walk off the stage and fall into the band pit, the orchestra pit. Remarkable times we're in. Amazing stuff. So I want to get to those today. But I want to start with Joe Biden because it was Friday, and it seems like a long time ago. It was Friday that Joe Biden did the interview with George Stephanopolous. It's another hard-hitting interview with a Clinton administration official. It's good to be a Democrat, isn't it? Because everywhere you go, they've got Democrats in all these positions. They got Chunk Todd, and they got Jim Sciutto and Jake Tapper, and you got George Stephanopolous. You got all these Democrat Party apparatchiks that then make their way to what we laughingly call journalism today. And sat down with Joe Biden did with George Stephanopolous. There's a rumor that he's going to do a press conference on Thursday this week. I'll believe it when I see it. And if he does, maybe that'll be the one where he announces that he's stepping aside. Keep in mind, stepping aside is the party, the Democrat Party has issued the words. Stepping aside, not stepping down, not quitting, not retiring, stepping aside, right? And here's the other phrase they're using, passing the torch. All right, those are the two phrases. The party it is more like the Soviet Union every day. The party issues the words, the phrases. They give the reporters the questions. They give the candidate the answers. The candidate has no idea what day it is. It's like the Soviet Union when they had these 80-year-old leaders that would stand up there in their fur coats with their fur hats and review the troops going by in Red Square, with the tanks going by. And they wear 100 medals even though they never fired a shot. And we used to mock those people in the Soviet Union. Now the Democrat Party is the Soviet Union in the United States. We didn't win the Cold War. It just morphed. And now the Democrat Party is the Soviet Union, and they're still trying to take over the world. They're the Bolsheviks. Bernie Sanders is an actual Bolshevik who honeymooned in the Soviet Union when it was the Soviet Union. And he's a commie. There are commies everywhere, I'm telling you. These people, so many crazy things. All right, let's get to some Joe Biden and George Stephanopolous on Friday because, we had Corinne Jean-Pierre. Last week was asked, did Joe Biden, in fact, you have that soundbite handy with that, Corinne was asked, and I pointed it out, and I talked about it here last Wednesday. It was a reporter, a woman from CBS News, White House correspondent, and asked Cringe, I thought it was a very strange question, did Joe Biden take a neurological test after the debate since his brain didn't work?
After the debate, did the president get examined by a doctor or did he get a neurological scan?
A neurological scan?
Huh? What's that?
Look,
what?
what I can say is that, just to take a step back,
You'd say yes.
it was a bad night. We understand that it was a bad night.
Yeah, it's not my question.
And the president has spoken to this.
Uh-huh.
And he understands that.
Uh-huh. And then she didn't ask the follow-up question, the so-called reporter. She didn't ask the follow-up question, which is, yeah, we know. But my question was, let's go back to my question. Did he have a neurological exam? And no, and the entire White House press corps sat there with their heads up one another's dark and remote locations. They had a conga line going, but you can't hear them because of their heads are buried in dark and remote locations. Conga line. And not a single one of them said, well, wait a minute, you didn't answer the question. That's a weird question out of the blue. Did he have a neurological exam? Did he get a neurological? And I said at the time, CBS must have gotten a tip that he had some kind of a brain exam after did he get a PET scan or a CAT scan or what did he get? An MRI to see what's going on with his brain? Did he meet with a doctor? And Cringe didn't answer the question, and the dim-witted CBS reporter didn't have the wherewithal, the wits to say, well, wait a minute, you didn't answer the question, which is suspicious. So that's when you pound the table and ask the follow-up. And the entire White House press corps should have jumped in to say, well, why didn't she answer that question? That's quite peculiar. Well, everybody's getting the same tip because Snuffleupagus of the Clinton White House asked the same question, but he had Joe Biden in front of him, and his questions, I guess, weren't issued by the White House as they usually are. So Stephanopolous asked, and he's a Clintonista, of course, and the Clintonistas, I think, have decided it's time for Joe to move on, to step aside, It's time to pass the torch. Here is Stephanopolous and Joe Biden on the same matter.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
I know you did.
He said, he just looked at me. He said, you're exhausted.
Said you're, what?
I said, look, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know.
Yeah.
Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go.
You get good ones?
I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong.
Really? So what are they telling you? Yeah, that'd be a natural follow-up, but Stephanopolous didn't ask that either. Hey, how about that full neurological exam?
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
Huh? What's that?
I get a full neurological test every day with me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been able to read for my physicals. Yes.
Well, what? Yes. And again, Steffi didn't ask the obvious follow-up question, which is, well, wait a minute. Did you have a full, because there's still no actual answer to but he followed up a little bit. And honestly, Steffi didn't do a terrible, awful job in a 22-minute interview. He is asking the Clintonista questions. The party, and Steph is an operative of the party, not necessarily specifically of Team Biden or the Biden White House. He's a Democrat Party guy, and the macro Democrat Party is showing Joe Biden the door. You heard it here first a year and a half ago, and and months ago and weeks ago. I've been on the pointy end of this spear. Steffi to Joe on the cognitive test.
Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
No one said I had to. No one said, they said I'm good.
No one said I had to.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results?
Heck no.
To the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day.
That's a no.
Every day I have that test.
How's that? Well, because all the tough questions you take from reporters, the never-ending questions like President Trump always did, when he'd take 100 questions for an hour and exhaust the reporters and infuriate them. Amazing stuff. So Steffi noticed the calendar didn't marry up with the BS that the White House was peddling.
You say you were exhausted, and I know you've said that before as well, but you came, and you did have a tough month, but you came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days.
Tough month.
Before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible.
Because I was sick. They claimed that he had a cold, then they claimed that he didn't have a cold. Sure. Yeah, that's it. He was sick, and everything's fine. Steffi didn't go real hardball, but he asked some questions. And I think that he sunk his battleship, honestly.
I guess the question, the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching is you've said, going back to 2020, watch me. Yep. To people who are concerned about your age. And, 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including till 2 o'clock in the morning after that debate. I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response,
huge crowd.
Slipping. And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
There were a couple of dozen people at the huge crowd. Is not exactly U2-sized crowds. And Stephanopolous putting him to him a little bit.
Do you have the mental and physical capacity to do it for another 4 years?
No.
Please, I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I did. Look.
Just one more thing he's wrong about.
I'm running again because I think I understand best what has to be done to take this nation to a completely new level. We're on our way.
Yeah, just learn to speak Spanish and buy a gun, because the open borders and the Latin American gangs and the cartels and how many 30,000 Chinese and how many from the Middle East and Central Asia. No, what could go wrong? Everything's great. Can't buy a house, can't buy gas, can't find food at the grocery store. But now everything's ready. He's taking the country to the next level. Hey, he didn't say it was going to be up. It's just the next level is down, way down. That's the plan that the left has for us. They've had this plan for a long time. And now they own the Democrat Party. They're here to drive a stake through the heart of the United States of America. Steffi asked him a couple of questions about politics, too. That's coming up. ABC News, which employs George Stephanopolous for $17 million a year. Their headline, Biden sends defiant letter to Democrats, says time to end questions. Come together. Come together. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And the Wall Street Journal headline, Biden tells Democrats he's, quote, running this race to the end. He's running it to the end. I don't think he can run anywhere, really, without danger of tripping over something and falling down and hurting himself. He could break a hip that way. He tells them he sent the letter to Democrats in Congress and nobody else. And when we say send a letter, we mean he wrote it with a quill pen on parchment, folded it up, put it in an envelope, and he dropped it in the mailbox in front of the White House. It should get there in a few days. No couriers for him. He tells them the party needs to unite in order to beat Donald Trump. See, because democracy is on the line. That's what they're saying. That's what they're telling everybody. The question of how to move forward has been well aired for over a week now, Joe Biden had somebody write for him. And it's time for it to end. We have one job, and that is to beat Donald Trump. We have 42 days to the Democratic convention and 119 days to the general election. That's all the time you got, Joe. If that. Any weakening of resolve or lack of clarity about the task ahead only helps Trump and hurts us. It is time to come together, move forward as a unified party, and defeat Donald Trump. It's a very exciting letter. Sent it to the Democrats on Capitol Hill. Now that you have returned from the 4th of July recess, I want you to know that despite all the speculation in the press and elsewhere, I am firmly committed to staying in this race, to running this race to the end, and to beating Donald Trump, he writes. Isn't that amazing? And then there was a funny sound. It sounded like, Trump. And he kind of growled and fell over. It was very sad. There it is. There it is. That's. I've had extensive conversations with the leadership of the party, he says. He's not going anywhere. So he thinks. But I'm here to tell you the party thinks otherwise.